Have you ever witnessed a moment so brutal it carved itself into someone's soul forever? Because what you're about to hear isn't just about a billionaire's arrogance or a waitress's humiliation. This is about the night Danielle Carter's entire existence was reduced to 2 words, and how those words became the spark that would eventually burn down an empire. But before we get to the part where a man worth $8 billion drops to his knees in front of the world, begging for mercy he never gave, we need to go back to where it all started: a greasy diner, a careless brush of fabric, and 5 words that changed everything. The fluorescent lights of Lou's diner hummed their usual tired song at 11:47 on a Wednesday night. Danielle Carter wiped down table 6 for the 3rd time, her fingers pruned from hours of dishwater and her feet screaming inside cheap sneakers that had long stopped cushioning anything. 24 years old, 2 jobs, 1 dream of finishing her communications degree, and a younger brother who needed her to keep pushing, keep smiling, keep pretending everything was manageable. But tonight felt different. The bell above the door chimed, and Danielle glanced up from her rag. 3 men in suits that probably cost more than her monthly rent stepped inside, moving like they owned not just the diner, but the air itself. The one in the center, mid-50s, sharp cheekbones, eyes that calculated value in everything they touched, scanned the room with visible disdain. "Corner booth," he said in accented English, not to anyone in particular, just expecting the universe to comply. Danielle recognized wealth when she saw it. Chicago attracted all kinds, especially near the financial district. But this man wore his money differently, like armor, like permission, like a weapon. She grabbed 3 menus and approached. "Good evening, gentlemen, right this way." The man in the center didn't acknowledge her. His colleagues, one American, slick-haired and grinning, the other Chinese, younger, nervous, followed as she led them to the back booth. "Coffee for you?" Danielle asked, pen hovering over her notepad. "Black, hot, fast." The center man, Zhao Liang, though she wouldn't learn his name until later, still hadn't looked at her face. "Same for me," the American added with a wink that made her skin crawl. "You got a name, sweetheart?" "Danielle. I'll get those right out." She returned 3 minutes later with a tray, hands steady despite the exhaustion pulling at her bones. As she placed the first cup in front of Zhao, her sleeve, just the fabric of her uniform, barely grazed his hand. He recoiled like she'd burned him. "Don't touch me." The words came cold, sharp, final. Danielle froze, coffee pot still in hand. Zhao looked at her for the first time, and what she saw in his eyes wasn't anger. It was dismissal, complete, effortless erasure of her humanity. "You're beneath me." The diner didn't go silent. That only happens in movies. But the conversations around them dulled, heads turned, and Danielle felt every pair of eyes like needles against her skin. The American laughed, awkward and too loud. "Zhao, come on, man. She didn't mean—" "I know what I said." Zhao waved him off, already bored with the interaction, returning to the document in front of him as if Danielle had ceased to exist entirely. She stood there, tray trembling now, heat crawling up her neck. Not just embarrassment. This was deeper. This was every time someone clutched their purse tighter when she walked by. Every time a professor assumed she was the diversity admission. Every time her father told her, "Baby girl, you're gonna have to work twice as hard for half the respect." And now this. "You're beneath me." She wanted to throw the coffee in his face, wanted to scream, wanted to tell him about the 3.9 GPA she was grinding for, about her little brother Marcus who looked up to her, about her father who died working himself into the ground for men exactly like this one. Instead, Danielle Carter swallowed the rage, placed the remaining cups down with shaking hands, and whispered, "Enjoy your coffee." She walked back to the counter, and only then, only when she was safely behind the partition, did she let the tears blur her vision. Lou, the owner, a 60-something Greek immigrant with kind eyes, touched her shoulder. "Don't let trash like that get to you." But it already had, because "beneath me" wasn't just an insult. It was a diagnosis. It was the world telling her exactly where she ranked and how little her dignity mattered to people who had enough money to rewrite reality. Danielle finished her shift at 2 in the morning. The billionaire and his entourage had left an hour earlier, tipping exactly 15%. Not generous, not cruel, just transactional. Even his money felt like contempt. She rode the bus home, staring at her reflection in the dark window. A black woman in a stained uniform, smelling like fryer grease and humiliation. Was this all she'd ever be to people like him? Invisible, until inconvenient. Her apartment, a cramped one-bedroom she shared with her 15-year-old brother Jamal, was dark when she arrived. She kicked off her sneakers and collapsed onto the couch, too tired to even make it to the bed. But sleep wouldn't come. "You're beneath me." The words played on loop, poison in her bloodstream. Danielle sat up, flicked on the lamp, and looked across the room at the stack of boxes she'd been avoiding for 2 years. Her father's things. The ones she'd packed up after the funeral and never had the courage to sort through. Samuel Carter, accountant, loving father, dead at 51 from a heart attack that the doctors said came out of nowhere. She'd always wondered if stress killed him. The long hours, the corporate pressure, the way he'd come home exhausted talking about fixing the numbers for people who never even learned his name. Tonight, for the first time, Danielle walked over to those boxes and opened the first one. Papers, files, spreadsheets with company names she didn't recognize. And then, her breath caught. A folder labeled Zhao International Holdings. Danielle pulled it out, hands trembling for a different reason now. Inside were documents, transaction records, sticky notes in her father's handwriting, discrepancies, flagged for review, offshore accounts, shell corporations. Her father had worked for this man, for Zhao Liang, the same man who'd looked at her tonight like she was dirt on his shoe. And these papers, these weren't just accounting files. These were breadcrumbs, evidence of something wrong, something hidden. Danielle spread the documents across the coffee table, her exhaustion forgotten. One page showed property transactions in Chicago, residential buildings purchased through shell companies, then mysteriously cleared for commercial development. Another flagged money moving through accounts in the Cayman Islands, amounts that didn't match the reported earnings. Her father had been investigating him, and 3 months after flagging these files, Samuel Carter was dead. She had no idea this moment would define her entire future, and neither do most people until it's too late. Subscribe so you never miss the signs when your life is about to change forever. Danielle sat there until sunrise, reading every page, her mind racing. This wasn't random. Her father didn't die from stress. He died because he'd seen too much, and the man who dismissed her tonight, who called her beneath him, was connected to all of it. The humiliation from the diner twisted into something else now. Something colder, something sharp. Zhao Liang had looked right through her, never imagining the invisible waitress might have a name, a story, a father whose ghost was about to reach up from the grave and drag him into the light. Danielle picked up her phone and texted her best friend, Marcus Reed, a third-year law student who'd been trying to get her to move on from her father's death for years. "We need to talk. Now." 3 dots appeared. Then, "It's 6 a.m. D. What's wrong?" She typed back. "I found something. About my dad. About the man who killed him." "What man?" Danielle looked at the documents spread before her, at Zhao's name printed on page after page. "A billionaire who thinks people like us don't matter. But he's about to learn he was wrong." She leaned back, the first hint of a smile crossing her exhausted face. "You're beneath me," he'd said, "but men who stand that tall, they have the furthest to fall." And Danielle Carter was about to push. Marcus Reed showed up at Danielle's apartment 40 minutes later, still in his Northwestern law hoodie, clutching 2 coffees from the corner bodega like they were peace offerings. "This better be good," he said, stepping inside. Then he saw her face, eyes red-rimmed but blazing with something he'd never seen before, and his tone shifted. "D, what happened?" She didn't answer, just handed him the folder. Marcus sat on the couch, flipping through pages while Danielle paced behind him. words tumbling out faster than she could organize them. Dad worked for Zhao International. I never knew because he handled multiple accounts. But look at the dates. March through June, 4 years ago. Right before he died. Marcus held up a spreadsheet covered in her father's handwriting. These are shell corporations? 15 of them, all linked back to Zhao. Dad flagged transactions that didn't make sense. Money going offshore, properties bought under fake company names, then flipped for development after residents were forced out. That's not just shady, Dee. That's money laundering, real estate fraud. Danielle stopped pacing. Dad knew he was building a case, and then he had a heart attack. Marcus set the papers down carefully, like they might explode. You think Zhao killed him? The question hung in the air, too big and terrible to fully absorb. I think my father found something dangerous, Danielle said quietly. And 3 months later, he was dead. 51 years old, no prior heart problems, and the autopsy was ruled natural causes before we even had time to ask questions. Marcus rubbed his face. Okay, let's say you're right. Let's say your dad stumbled onto something and someone wanted him quiet. Do you understand what you're suggesting? Zhao Liang isn't just rich, Dee, he's connected. International connections, political connections, the kind of man who makes problems disappear. Like my father? The words came out sharper than she intended, but she didn't take them back. Marcus stood, crossing to her. I know you're hurting. Last night at the diner, what he said to you. That was vile, unforgivable. But revenge, against a billionaire? That's not a fight you can win. So I should just let it go. Danielle's voice cracked. Pretend my dad didn't die trying to expose him. Pretend last night didn't happen. I'm saying you could get hurt. Or worse. She met his eyes, and he saw it then. The decision already made. The line already crossed. Marcus, do you remember what you told me when you decided to go to law school? He sighed. That someone has to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. Exactly. So help me fight, or get out of my way. They spent the next 6 hours going through every document. Marcus, despite his warnings, couldn't help himself. His legal mind latched onto the patterns, the inconsistencies, the beautiful, damning trail of evidence Samuel Carter had started to build. Look at this, Marcus said, spreading 3 pages across the coffee table. Your dad cross-referenced property purchases with eviction records. These families, mostly black and Latino, low income, were pushed out using bogus code violations. Then, Zhao's shell companies bought the buildings for pennies, demolished them, and sold the land to developers at 5 times the price. Danielle leaned over his shoulder. How is that legal? It's not. But proving it requires tracing the money through multiple countries and untangling corporate structures designed specifically to hide ownership. Your dad was halfway there, but he'd need subpoenas, warrants, federal cooperation. Things he'd never get while Zhao's lawyers bury everything in motions. Marcus nodded grimly. Exactly. Danielle picked up a photograph that had fallen from the folder, her father, younger, smiling at some office party. He looked tired even then, but proud, like he believed his work mattered. Dad always said the numbers don't lie, she whispered. He used to tell me, baby girl, you can spin stories, but math is truth, and truth always finds its way out. Then let's find it. Marcus pulled out his laptop. We can't go to the police yet, not without more proof, but we can verify what your dad started. I'll reach out to some professors who specialize in financial crimes, see if they can point us toward public records that might connect the dots. Danielle's phone buzzed, a text from her manager at the diner. Can you cover tomorrow night? Short-handed. Tomorrow night. Back to the same place where Zhao Liang had looked at her like she was nothing. An idea sparked, dangerous and necessary. Marcus, what if we don't go to the police at all? He looked up from his laptop. What do you mean? You said it yourself. Zhao's lawyers would bury any official investigation for years. By then, he'll have moved his money, destroyed evidence, maybe hurt more people. She sat down across from him. But what if we get the proof ourselves? How? I'm invisible to him. He looked right through me last night, and he'll do it again. Men like Zhao? They don't see service workers as threats. We're furniture, background noise. Marcus's eyes widened. You want to spy on him? I want to finish what my father started. Danielle's jaw set. If Zhao comes back to the diner, I'll listen. I'll watch. I'll be the ghost he never notices until it's too late. That's insane and dangerous. So was dismissing me to my face. She leaned forward. You're either with me or you're not, but I'm doing this. Marcus stared at her for a long moment, then closed his laptop with a decisive snap. Fine, but we do this smart. No cowboy moves. You observe, record if you can, report back. I'll work the legal angle, build the case so when we have enough we can bury him properly. Danielle extended her hand. Partners? Marcus took it, grip firm despite the fear in his eyes. Partners. But promise me something. What? Don't lose yourself in this. Zhao's a monster, but becoming one to beat him? That's not justice. That's just more darkness. She nodded, but deep down, Danielle wasn't sure where the line was anymore. The woman who'd served coffee last night, polite, swallowing disrespect with a smile, she was already gone. In her place stood someone colder, sharper, someone who understood that the world didn't reward nice girls who played by rules written by men like Zhao Liang. That afternoon, Danielle returned to her father's boxes, digging deeper. More files, more transactions, and then something that stopped her cold. A death certificate. Not her father's. Wang Li. Age 38. Chinese national. Cause of death. Accidental drowning. Clipped to it was a news article from 6 years ago. Accountant dies in Lake Michigan tragedy. And beneath that, a sticky note in her father's handwriting. Wang found discrepancies first. Coincidence? Danielle's blood ran cold. Her father wasn't the first. Someone else had discovered Zhao's secrets before him, and that person was also dead. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking, and called Marcus. We've got a bigger problem, she said when he answered. Dad wasn't the first person investigating Zhao. There was someone before him, and he's dead too. Silence on the other end. Then, how did he die? Drowned. They called it an accident. Jesus, Marcus, what if my father's heart attack wasn't natural? What if they made it look that way? Her voice broke. What if Zhao has been killing people who get too close for years? Then we need to be extremely careful. Because if you're right, you just became his next problem. Zhao Liang returned to Lu's diner exactly 1 week later. Danielle saw him through the window before he entered. Same expensive suit, same 3-man entourage, same aura of untouchable arrogance. Her stomach twisted, but she forced herself to smile at the regular customer she was serving. Anything else, Mr. Patterson? Just the check, sweetheart. She processed his payment, hands steady, despite the adrenaline screaming through her veins. By the time she looked up, Zhao was sliding into the same corner booth, flanked by the same slick American businessman, Richard Hale, she'd learned from a quick Google search, and a different Chinese associate. Lu caught her eye from behind the counter, concern creasing his weathered face. He'd witnessed last week's humiliation, had offered to ban Zhao from the diner, but Danielle had refused. I've got this, she mouthed to him now. She approached the booth, notepad ready, wearing her invisibility like armor. Good evening, gentlemen. What can I get started for you? Zhao didn't look up from his phone. Coffee? Black? No, please. No acknowledgement. Exactly as expected. Richard Hale, however, leaned back with that same greasy smile. Well, you again. Danielle, right? That's right. You know, Zhao, this young lady has excellent service, very attentive. The way he said attentive made her skin crawl, but she kept her expression neutral. I don't care about the help's qualities, Zhao muttered, still typing. Just bring the coffee. The help. Not even waitress. Just help. Danielle swallowed the anger and headed to the counter. Marcus had given her a pen 2 days ago, a normal-looking ballpoint that recorded audio when you clicked it twice. It sat in her apron pocket now, waiting. She returned with 3 coffees, and this time She was careful not to let any part of her body come near Zhao. She placed his cup at the far edge of the table, making him reach for it. "Will you be ordering food tonight?" "Not from here," Zhao said, wrinkling his nose. "This place smells like poverty." Richard laughed, though his eyes flickered with something like embarrassment. "Come on, Zhao. Lou's has the best pie in Chicago." "I don't eat where the desperate eat." Zhao finally looked up, his gaze sweeping past Danielle like she was transparent. "We're just here to talk. Privacy. Keep other customers away from this section." "Of course." Danielle walked away, heart hammering. She positioned herself at the server station within earshot, pretending to roll silverware while her hand slipped into her apron. 2 clicks. The pen was recording. "Telling you the permits are locked," Richard was saying. 6 more months and the Garfield Park property is ours. The last 3 families signed this morning." "They signed or they were convinced to sign?" This from the Chinese associate, whose voice carried notes of concern. Richard's laugh was sharp. "Does it matter? They're gone. That's what counts." "The community board is asking questions," the associate continued. "There's a reporter from the Tribune sniffing around the sudden code violations." "So we pay the reporter to sniff somewhere else." Zhao's voice was bored, like he was discussing what to order for lunch. "Money fixes noise." "It always does." Danielle's hands tightened around the fork she was wrapping. "Garfield Park. Her aunt lived there. Her aunt and 3 kids in a small house they'd owned for 15 years. "What about the accountant's family?" Richard asked, and Danielle's blood turned to ice. "You said there was a daughter?" "Irrelevant." Zhao waved dismissively. "Samuel Carter's widow knows nothing. The daughter's a college dropout working service jobs. No one listens to people like that." College dropout. Danielle hadn't dropped out. She'd taken a semester off to support Jamal after their father died. But of course Zhao wouldn't know that, wouldn't care to know. "Still," Richard pressed, "if she has her father's files." "She doesn't. I had someone check their apartment after Carter died. Whatever he'd compiled was incomplete, and I made sure his employer destroyed the company copies. There's nothing left to find." Danielle's mind reeled. "Someone checked our apartment? After Dad died?" "You're certain?" the associate asked nervously. "I'm always certain." Zhao lifted his coffee cup, examining it with distaste, before setting it down untouched. "Carter was a problem who solved himself. Heart attacks are convenient that way." Richard chuckled darkly. "Just like Wang's drowning." "Exactly." The casual admission hung in the air, not quite a confession, but close enough. Close enough that Danielle's hands started shaking, and she had to set down the silverware before she dropped it. They killed him. They actually killed him. Her father's heart attack wasn't natural. It was murder, dressed up as natural causes, and Zhao was sitting 15 feet away discussing it like a minor business expense. "Speaking of problems," Richard continued, "we've got another situation. The Chen family in Garfield Park. The grandmother refuses to sign. She's organizing the other holdouts, talking about hiring a lawyer." "Then make her understand she has no choice." Zhao's tone went cold. "I don't care how. Legal pressure, financial pressure, whatever it takes. That property is worth 40 million once it's cleared and rezoned. I'm not losing 40 million because some old woman is sentimental about a house." Danielle's aunt. They were talking about terrorizing her aunt's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, a 72-year-old woman who'd lived in Garfield Park since 1983. "What if she still won't budge?" the associate asked. Zhao's smile was thin and terrible. "Then she'll have an accident. People her age. Tragic but common." Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Zhao, that's business." Zhao stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "I didn't build an empire by being sentimental. You either clear obstacles or you lose, and I don't lose." He dropped a $50 bill on the table, payment for 3 coffees that cost $9 total, and walked out without another word. No goodbye, no acknowledgement of Danielle standing 10 feet away. Richard lingered, catching her eye as he passed. "You didn't hear any of that, right?" Danielle met his gaze, forcing confusion onto her face. "Hear what, sir?" He studied her for a moment, then smiled. "Smart girl. Stay smart." When they were gone, Danielle's legs nearly gave out. She stumbled to the server station, pulled out the pen, and clicked it off with trembling fingers. Lou appeared at her elbow. "You okay, kid?" "I need to make a phone call." She didn't wait for permission. Danielle walked out the back door into the alley, gulped the cold November air, and dialed Marcus. "I got it," she said when he answered. "I got everything." 20 minutes later, Marcus burst into the diner's back office where Danielle waited, laptop already out. She played him the recording twice. "Holy hell," he breathed. "Dee, this is conspiracy to commit fraud, intimidation, and he basically admitted to murdering your father." "Not basically, he did. You heard him. Carter solved himself. They caused his heart attack somehow, just like they drowned Wang Li." Marcus paced the tiny office. Okay, we need to think strategically. This recording is gold, but it's not enough for a murder conviction. Convenient isn't the same as we poisoned him, but the fraud, the intimidation, that's solid. So we go to the police. Not yet. Marcus stopped pacing. If we go now, Zhao's lawyers will argue the recording was obtained illegally. You're not a cop. You don't have a warrant. They'll get it thrown out and destroy any remaining evidence before we can build a real case. Danielle slammed her hand on the desk. So what? We just let him keep destroying families. My aunt is in Garfield Park, Marcus. Mrs. Chen is her neighbor. Zhao just threatened to kill a 72-year-old woman. I know, and that's exactly why we have to be smart. Marcus crouched in front of her chair, forcing her to meet his eyes. We build an airtight case. Financial records, witness testimony, more recordings. We make it impossible for him to wriggle out. Then we strike. How long will that take? Weeks, maybe a month. People could die in a month, or we could blow this now and accomplish nothing. Marcus grabbed her hands. Dee, I know you want justice today, but your father spent months investigating Zhao and he died before he could finish. Don't let his work be for nothing. Let's finish what he started, the right way. Danielle closed her eyes, fighting the urge to scream. Every instinct wanted to burn Zhao's world down tonight, but Marcus was right. Rushing in would only get them crushed. Fine, she said finally. We do it your way, but I'm going deeper. What does that mean? She looked up at him, and he saw something new in her expression, something ruthless. Richard Hale is interested in me. He kept staring, making comments. What if I use that? Absolutely not. Marcus, no. You want to record conversations? Fine. But getting close to these people? That's dangerous territory. You don't know what Hale is capable of. I know what Zhao's capable of. He killed my father. And if Hale's his partner, he's just as guilty. Danielle stood, sudden clarity washing over her. Think about it. If I can get into their circle, even peripherally, I can access information we'd never get otherwise. Documents, meetings, private conversations. Or you could end up like your father. The words hit like a slap. Marcus's face immediately softened. I'm sorry, that was true. Danielle's voice was steel. It's true, and that's exactly why I have to do this. Because if I don't, more people die. More families get destroyed. And Zhao keeps winning. Marcus searched her face, looking for the woman he'd known since freshman year, the one who laughed too loud at his bad jokes, who cried during every Pixar movie, who believed in the fundamental goodness of people. She was still there, somewhere, but she was changing, hardening. Promise me something, he said quietly. What? Don't lose yourself in this hunt. Catching monsters is important, but not if you become one. Danielle thought about her father, kind, principled Samuel Carter, who'd tried to expose Zhao the legal way and ended up dead. She thought about Mrs. Chen, facing threats because she wouldn't abandon her home. She thought about every person Zhao had called beneath him while crushing them under his expensive shoes. I promise, she lied, because the truth was, Danielle wasn't sure there was anything left to lose. The person she'd been, The woman who flinched at confrontation, who apologized for existing in rich people's spaces, had died the moment Zhao said those words. "You're beneath me." No, not anymore. Now she was the thing he should have feared all along. Someone invisible who saw everything. Someone powerless who'd learned exactly where power lived and how to take it apart piece by piece. Zhao Liang had looked right through her. Soon he'd be begging to be seen. Richard Hale called the diner 3 days later. Danielle was wiping down tables during the afternoon lull when Lou shouted from behind the counter, "Phone for you, Dee, says it's important." She picked up the greasy receiver, already knowing. "This is Danielle." "Danielle. Richard Hale. We met last week at the diner." His voice oozed charm, practiced and hollow. "I hope you don't mind. I got the number from your manager, told him I wanted to send a compliment about your service." Her skin crawled, but she kept her voice light. "That's very kind, Mr. Hale. Call me Richard. Listen, I'm putting together a small event next week, networking thing for some business associates. We need extra serving staff and I thought of you. Pays $300 for 4 hours. Cash. $300. That was half her rent. But more importantly, it was access. What kind of event? Just cocktails and conversation, very upscale. The Drake Hotel, you'd wear black and white, serve drinks, blend into the background. Think you can handle that? Blend into the background. Be invisible. Exactly what she needed. I can handle it. Perfect. Next Friday, 6 p.m. Come to the service entrance and ask for me. He paused. And Danielle? Dress nice. First impressions matter, even for the help. The line went dead. Danielle stood there, receiver humming in her hand, Marcus's warning echoing in her head. This is dangerous territory. But dangerous was where the truth lived. Marcus was less than thrilled when she told him. Absolutely not. No way. This is exactly what I told you not to do. They were in his cramped apartment near campus, law textbooks stacked like defensive walls around them. Danielle sat on his threadbare couch, arms crossed. "It's a catering gig, Marcus. I'll be serving drinks to business people. What's he going to do, murder me in front of 50 witnesses? Your father was killed by these people. Which is exactly why I need to get closer." Danielle stood, pacing the small space. "Do you know what kind of conversations happen when rich people think the staff isn't listening? They get comfortable, sloppy. This is our chance to gather real intelligence." Marcus pulled off his glasses, rubbing his eyes. "And if Hale's interest in you isn't professional, if he tries something, then I'll handle it." "How?" She met his gaze, unflinching. "However, I need to." The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally, Marcus sighed, the fight draining out of him. "Fine, but you wear a wire. And I'll be nearby, parked outside the hotel the entire time. First sign of trouble, you text me and I'm coming in." "Deal." He pulled out a small device from his desk drawer, a microphone no bigger than a button, with a transmitter that could clip to her waistband under her clothes. "Got this from a friend in the journalism program. It'll broadcast to my laptop within a 100-yard radius. I'll record everything." Danielle took the device, turning it over in her palm. Such a small thing to carry such enormous weight. "Marcus, what if we find out something worse than we already know? Then we make sure the whole world hears it." The week crawled by. Danielle worked her regular shifts, watched her aunt's neighborhood with increasing anxiety, and researched everything she could find about Richard Hale. What she discovered painted a portrait of American ambition at its ugliest. Born to old Chicago money, educated at Yale, made his first million in real estate by 28. He'd partnered with Zhao 5 years ago, bringing local connections and political access, while Zhao provided international capital and ruthlessness. The partnership had been extraordinarily profitable. Together, they'd redeveloped 3 Chicago neighborhoods, displacing hundreds of families and turning affordable housing into luxury condos. The pattern was always the same: create problems through code violations or manufactured safety concerns, pressure residents to sell for below market value, demolish, rebuild, profit. Legal, technically, ethical, not even close. But buried in a Chicago Tribune article from 6 years ago, Danielle found something else. A mention of Richard Hale being questioned in connection with the death of Wang Li, the accountant who drowned in Lake Michigan. Mr. Hale's relationship with the deceased was purely professional, his lawyer had stated. He's cooperating fully with the investigation and mourns this tragic accident. The investigation had closed 3 weeks later. Accidental drowning. Case dismissed. Danielle printed the article and added it to the growing file on her coffee table, a conspiracy board without the red string, but just as obsessive. Her father's documents, her recordings, news clippings, public records of property transfers. Somewhere in this mess was the complete picture, the proof that would bring Zhao and Hale to their knees. She just had to survive long enough to find it. Friday arrived with unseasonable cold, the kind of November chill that cut through clothes and settled in bones. Danielle dressed carefully, simple black dress, sensible flats, hair pulled into a neat bun, professional, forgettable. The wire was clipped to her bra, the microphone positioned just below her collar where it wouldn't be visible. She tested it 3 times with Marcus, who sat in his car outside her apartment, headphones on, laptop glowing. "Coming through clear," he said through her phone's speaker. "Remember, stay observant. Don't take unnecessary risks. Text you if anything feels wrong. I know, Marcus. I've got this." "D," his voice softened. "Your dad would be proud of you. What you're doing, it takes real courage." Tears threatened, but she blinked them back. Or real stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. The Drake Hotel rose like a monument to old money, all gilt edges and marble floors. Danielle entered through the service door as instructed, where a harried event coordinator thrust a tray into her hands and rattled off instructions. "You're late. No, don't apologize. Just get upstairs. Ballroom B. Serve the champagne, keep the trays full, and for God's sake, smile. These people tip well if you're pleasant." The ballroom was exactly what she'd expected. Crystal chandeliers, expensive suits, laughter that sounded like money. 50 people, maybe 60, clustered in groups, talking with the practiced ease of those who'd never worried about rent or groceries or choosing between electricity and medication. Richard Hale spotted her immediately. He crossed the room, drink in hand, smile sharp. "Danielle, you clean up nicely." "Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Hale." "Richard, please, we're all friends here." He gestured broadly at the room. "These are Chicago's finest. Developers, investors, city officials. Keep their glasses full and their secrets will pour out just as easily." He winked and she forced a laugh. "I'll do my best." "I'm sure you will." His hand landed on her lower back, fingers lingering. "Stick around after service. I'd like to discuss some additional opportunities." Then he was gone, absorbed back into a conversation about tax incentives and zoning variances. Danielle moved through the room like smoke, refilling glasses, collecting empties, listening. The wire captured everything. Discussions of under-the-table payments to city inspectors, jokes about relocating inconvenient residents, casual racism dressed up as concern about neighborhood character. These were the people who shaped Chicago, and they were rotten straight through. She was refilling champagne flutes near the windows when she heard Zhao's voice. He'd arrived late, flanked by 2 men in dark suits who were clearly security rather than associates. "Telling you, the Garfield Park deal closes next month. The last holdouts will be gone by then." Danielle's hand trembled, champagne nearly sloshing over the rim. She steadied herself, moving closer while keeping her eyes down, invisible. "What about the Chen woman?" This from a man she didn't recognize, middle-aged and nervous. "Handled." Zhao's voice was flat. "She had a gas leak yesterday, very unfortunate. She's in the hospital, and her family is suddenly much more motivated to sell." The room tilted. Mrs. Chen. They'd actually hurt her. Danielle's vision went red at the edges, but she kept pouring, kept moving, kept breathing. The wire was recording. Marcus was hearing this. They had evidence now, real, actionable evidence of attempted murder. "Zhao, that's—" the nervous man started. "That's business." Zhao accepted a glass from Danielle's tray without looking at her. "Sentiment is expensive. I don't indulge in expensive weaknesses." Richard appeared at Zhao's elbow, laughing at something another guest had said. "Speaking of expenses, Wait until you hear about the margins on the Garfield project. 40 million profit, maybe more if we can push through the fast-track permits. The alderman is secure? Zhao asked. Bought and paid for, though he's getting nervous about the attention. That Tribune reporter is still sniffing around, asking about the wave of code violations. Then perhaps the reporter needs a different story to chase. Zhao's smile was cold. Something more interesting than housing complaints. A scandal, maybe. Financial impropriety. Didn't his brother-in-law just get a new job with the city? I'll make some calls. Richard's eyes drifted across the room and landed on Danielle. Actually, speaking of attention, see that server? The black girl? Danielle's blood froze. She kept her head down, moving toward a different group, but her ears strained to hear. What about her? Zhao sounded bored. She works at that diner we use for private meetings. Lou's. I've seen her there multiple times. Always seems to be nearby when we're talking. So, she staffed their furniture. Maybe, but I did some checking after I hired her tonight. Her name's Danielle Carter. Richard paused meaningfully. Samuel Carter's daughter. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Danielle had ever heard. You hired Samuel Carter's daughter to serve at our private event. Zhao's voice went deadly quiet. Are you insane? I wanted to see what she knows. If she's digging into her father's work, then you just handed her access to everything. Zhao's careful control cracked. Where is she? Danielle was already moving, weaving through guests toward the exit, heart hammering. But Richard's voice cut through the ballroom. There, don't let her leave. She broke into a run, tray clattering to the floor, champagne glasses exploding against marble. Behind her, shouts erupted. Zhao's security pushed through the crowd. Danielle hit the service door at full speed, bursting into the corridor. Left or right? She chose left, sprinting toward the service elevator. Behind her, footsteps thundered. Her phone was in her hand, Marcus's number dialing. They know who I am, she gasped when he answered. They're chasing me. Get ready to move. I'm coming up. No, stay in the car. I'll get out. The elevator was too slow. She veered toward the stairwell, shouldering through the door and taking stairs 2 at a time, down and down. The wire still recording her ragged breathing, the pounding footsteps behind her. She burst out into the hotel lobby, where well-dressed guests turned to stare at the wild-eyed black woman in server's clothes running like her life depended on it. Because it did. The front entrance was ahead. She could see Marcus's car through the glass doors, engine running, but Richard appeared from a side corridor, blocking her path. His expression had transformed from charming to cold, any pretense of civility gone. Going somewhere, Danielle? She skidded to a halt. Behind her, Zhao's security emerged from the stairwell. Trapped. Richard stepped closer, voice low enough that only she could hear. You've been a busy girl, recording our conversations, playing detective. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? I think you killed my father. The words came out steady, clear. And I think everyone's about to know it. His smile was terrible. No one's going to know anything, because you're going to have an accident, just like your father, just like Wang Li. Wang Li. Danielle latched onto the name. You killed him too, drowned him in the lake, made it look accidental. Smart girl. Not smart enough, though. Richard grabbed her arm, grip bruising. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of here quietly with Zhao's men. We'll take a drive, and tomorrow Chicago will mourn another tragic death. Maybe you got mugged. Maybe you jumped. Depression runs in families, after all. Danielle's mind raced. The wire was still recording. Marcus was hearing everything, but what good was evidence if she was dead? Then she remembered. She was in a lobby full of witnesses. Rich, powerful witnesses who cared about reputation above all else. She made her voice loud, hysterical, the kind of scene wealthy people feared most. Get your hands off me! Help! Someone help me! The lobby froze. Every eye turned. Richard's grip tightened, his smile fixed, but she could see panic flickering in his eyes. Miss, please calm down. He's threatening me. These men killed my father. Someone call the police. A hotel manager rushed over. Sir, what's going on here? Nothing, just a misunderstanding. He admitted to murder. I'm recording everything. Danielle tore her arm free, stumbling backward. "My name is Danielle Carter, and if something happens to me, it's them. Richard Hale and Zhao Liang. They killed my father." Phones came out. Guests were filming now, drawn by drama like moths to flame. Richard's composure shattered. "You stupid bitch." And there it was, captured on a dozen phones. Richard Hale, respected Chicago developer, lunging at a terrified black woman in a hotel lobby while calling her a slur. Zhao appeared at the stairwell door, saw the scene, and his face went carefully blank. He turned and walked back the way he'd come, abandoning Richard to the consequences. Hotel security arrived, the police were called, and Danielle stood in the center of it all, shaking but alive, the wire against her skin still recording, Marcus's voice in her ear through the phone. "I'm here, Dee. I'm right here. You're safe now." But safe was relative, because she'd just declared war on the most dangerous men in Chicago, and wars had casualties. Richard was detained for questioning. Danielle gave her statement to the police, handed over the recording device, and watched as pieces started falling into place. Most people watch injustice happen and do nothing. Danielle refused to be one of them. If you're the type who roots for the underdog, subscribe, because what comes next will restore your faith. But as Marcus drove her home that night, Danielle stared out at the Chicago skyline and wondered, had she just won a battle or signed her own death warrant? Only time would tell. And time, she was learning, was the one thing money couldn't buy. The recording went viral within 48 hours. Not the wire recording, that was evidence, locked in police custody, but the cell phone videos from the Drake Hotel lobby, Richard Hale lunging at a black waitress, his face twisted with rage, the slur cutting through expensive marble acoustics. Zhao Liang abandoning his partner, disappearing like smoke. Chicago social media exploded. Local news picked it up. Then national outlets. By Monday morning, Danielle's face was everywhere, and so was theirs. "Social justice waitress exposes billionaire developers," read one headline. "Chicago's ugliest secret, how the rich displaced thousands," declared another. The Tribune reporter who'd been investigating the code violations suddenly had a mountain of new sources. Families came forward, telling stories of harassment, threats, impossible choices. The pattern was undeniable now, visible in daylight, impossible to ignore. But Zhao Liang had not built an empire by being easy to destroy. His lawyers released a statement. Mr. Liang deeply regrets the unfortunate incident at the Drake Hotel. Mr. Richard Hale acted independently and without Mr. Liang's knowledge or consent. Mr. Liang is cooperating fully with authorities and looks forward to clearing his name. Translation: Richard was the sacrificial lamb. Zhao was cutting him loose, burning the bridge, saving himself. Danielle sat in Marcus's apartment, surrounded by newspapers and laptop screens, watching Zhao's defense take shape in real time. "He's going to get away with it." Her voice was hollow. "All of it. My father, Wang Li, Mrs. Chen, he'll blame Richard for everything and walk away clean." Marcus paced behind her, phone pressed to his ear, talking to the third lawyer in as many hours. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "The DA likes the fraud case, the intimidation case. But murder, that's harder. Your father's death certificate says natural causes. Wang Li was ruled accidental. Without forensic evidence or a direct confession, it's all circumstantial." "I heard him, Marcus. Carter solved himself. Heart attacks are convenient." "I know. I heard it too. But a defense attorney will argue that's not an admission. It's just callous commentary. They'll paint Zhao as insensitive, not criminal." Danielle's hands clenched into fists. "So he gets away with murder because he was careful about how he committed it. Unless we can find proof that directly ties him to your father's death or Wang Li's, yes." The rage that had been simmering since that night at the diner boiled over. Danielle stood, shoving papers off the coffee table, sending Marcus's carefully organized files scattering. "This isn't justice!" Marcus let her rage, let her break, understanding she'd been holding it together for weeks and the dam had finally burst. When she collapsed back onto the couch, gasping and crying, he sat beside her. "You're right. It's not justice. Not yet. But we're not done fighting." "How? How do we fight someone who can buy his way out of anything?" We take away his money, his reputation, his power. Marcus pulled his laptop closer. The fraud case is solid. If we can prove he deliberately displaced families through illegal means, he'll face massive fines, prison time, and his empire will collapse. That's not nothing, Dee. But it's not enough. Maybe not, but it's something. He turned the screen toward her. And there's more. Remember how your father cross-referenced property transactions? I've been doing the same thing, going deeper. Zhao's shell corporations don't just hide fraud. They hide debts, massive debts. He's been using new developments to pay off old ones, constantly shuffling money to stay ahead of collapse. Danielle wiped her eyes, focusing on the spreadsheet. He's running a Ponzi scheme. Essentially, if his current projects fail, the whole empire crumbles. And guess what happens in 3 weeks? What? There's a charity gala in New York, the International Development Summit. Every major investor, politician, and media outlet will be there. Zhao's the keynote speaker. He's trying to secure funding for his biggest project yet. $50 million in new investment. Understanding dawned. If we expose him there, in front of everyone who matters with proof of his crimes, his investors will run, his partners will abandon him, the whole house of cards falls. Danielle's mind raced. A public confrontation. Maximum exposure. No room for Zhao's lawyers to spin the narrative before the world saw the truth. How do we get in? Marcus grinned, the expression sharp with shared purpose. Already working on it. One of my professors has connections to the event organizers. We're going as his research assistants, documenting the summit for an academic paper on international real estate development. Will they let us bring cameras? Better. The whole thing is live-streamed. Whatever happens on that stage will be seen by thousands in real time, recorded permanently. Marcus leaned back, satisfaction evident. We bring copies of your father's documents, the recordings, witness statements from displaced families. We build a presentation that's impossible to ignore, and when Zhao steps up to give his speech, we take the stage and show the world exactly who he is. It was risky, possibly illegal, definitely dangerous. It was also the only way to ensure Zhao couldn't slither away from consequences. 3 weeks, Danielle said slowly. That's not much time to prepare. Then we'd better get started. The next 20 days blurred together in a frenzy of preparation. Marcus reached out to everyone his father had worked with, compiling affidavits and financial records. Danielle contacted every family displaced by Zhao's developments, collecting testimonies, building a narrative of systematic abuse. Mrs. Chen, recovering from the gas leak that had mysteriously occurred in her home, agreed to speak publicly. So did 3 other families from Garfield Park. A former employee of one of Zhao's shell corporations came forward with internal emails proving the company knew about the illegal code violations. The evidence was overwhelming. The story was airtight. But Zhao wasn't sitting idle either. His lawyers filed lawsuits, defamation against Danielle, restraining orders demanding she stop harassing his associates, motions to suppress the wire recording as illegally obtained. They tied up the DA's office in paperwork, delaying the criminal investigation, buying time. Meanwhile, Richard Hale, facing charges of assault and conspiracy, struck a deal. He'd testify against Zhao in exchange for reduced charges. He's flipping, Marcus reported, after speaking with the prosecutor. Says he has information about Wang Li's death. Claims Zhao ordered it, and Richard helped cover it up. Will his testimony be enough? Depends. He's a co-conspirator, so his credibility is compromised. But if it corroborates everything else... Marcus paused. Yeah, it could be enough. 5 days before the gala, Danielle received a phone call from an unknown number. Against Marcus's advice, she answered. Miss Carter. Zhao's voice was silk and poison. We should talk. Her blood went cold. I have nothing to say to you. Perhaps, but I have much to say to you. A pause. Your brother Jamal, 15 years old, attends Lincoln Park High School, walks home every day around 3:30. The threat was crystal clear. Danielle's hands shook so hard she nearly dropped the phone. You touch him, and I will destroy you. You're already trying to destroy me, Miss Carter. And failing, but I could destroy him. He snapped his fingers, the sound sharp through the line. That easily. So here's my offer. Drop the crusade, stop cooperating with the police, and your brother stays safe. Continue and, well, accidents happen, especially to teenagers in Chicago. She wanted to scream, to threaten, to reach through the phone and tear him apart. Instead, she said carefully, I'll think about it. You have 24 hours. The line went dead. Marcus found her still holding the phone, staring at nothing. When she told him about the call, his face went pale. We need to get Jamal somewhere safe. Where? Zhao has reach, money. My aunt in Milwaukee. He can stay with her until this is over. Marcus was already texting. We'll drive him up tonight. Tell the school he's dealing with a family emergency. Zhao's people won't know where to look. It took 3 hours to convince Jamal, who was terrified and angry and didn't understand why his life was being upended again. But eventually he packed a bag, hugged Danielle tight, and whispered, Get him, sis, for Dad. Watching Marcus's car disappear toward Milwaukee, Danielle felt something inside her crystallize into absolute resolve. Zhao had just made his final mistake. The International Development Summit was held at the Javits Center in Manhattan, a sprawling glass structure that embodied everything Zhao's world represented. Expensive, cold, all sharp edges and reflections. Danielle and Marcus arrived early, badges identifying them as academic researchers. They carried tablets loaded with evidence, USB drives as backup, and copies of documents in case technology failed. The main hall filled quickly. Developers, investors, politicians, all mingling over cocktails and canapes, while a live-stream camera captured the event for the global audience. 5,000 people watching online, another 300 in person. Perfect. Zhao arrived fashionably late, flanked by new security, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Danielle's entire education. He took the stage for his keynote at 7 p.m., confident and smiling, completely unaware of what was about to happen, or so it seemed. But as Danielle watched him from the audience, she noticed something. Zhao kept glancing toward the exits. His security was positioned not just around him, but scanning the crowd, and when his eyes swept across the auditorium, they lingered on her for just a moment. He knew she was here. Marcus, she whispered, this is a trap. What? He knew we'd come. Look at the security placement. He's ready for us. Before Marcus could respond, Zhao began his speech. Ladies and gentlemen, we gather tonight to discuss the future of urban development, but I want to address the elephant in the room first. His smile was sharp. Recent allegations have been made against me and my organization, allegations I categorically deny. The room shifted uncomfortably. A young woman, understandably grief-stricken over her father's death, has constructed an elaborate conspiracy theory. She claims I'm responsible for murder, fraud, various other crimes. Zhao's voice dripped with sympathy. I understand her pain. Losing a parent is devastating, but grief sometimes clouds judgment. Danielle's hands clenched. He was getting ahead of the narrative, painting her as an unreliable narrator before she could even speak. So tonight, I've invited Miss Carter to join me on stage. Zhao gestured toward her. Come, Miss Carter, share your evidence. Let's examine these claims together, publicly, so the truth can emerge. Every head turned, cameras swiveled, the live stream zoomed in on Danielle's face. She'd wanted a confrontation, but not like this. Not with Zhao controlling the narrative, the stage, the framing. Marcus grabbed her arm. Don't. This is his game now. He'll destroy your credibility. If I don't go up there, I look like I'm afraid, like I'm lying. If you do go up there without preparation, I have the truth. That has to be enough. She stood, and the room held its breath. The walk to the stage felt eternal. Zhao watched her approach, expression carefully neutral, but she saw the triumph in his eyes. He thought he'd won. Maybe he had. But Danielle had learned something in these weeks of fighting. Sometimes you can't win cleanly. Sometimes victory requires sacrifice. She took the microphone Zhao offered, feeling its weight, its power. "My name is Danielle Carter," she began, voice steady, "and this man killed my father." The silence after her words was absolute. Zhao's smile didn't falter, but something flickered behind his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that she'd stated it so bluntly, so publicly, without hesitation. "That's a serious accusation," he said smoothly, taking back the microphone. "Do you have proof?" "I have his own words." Danielle pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly. "I recorded him admitting it." She played the audio from the hotel event, her father's voice distant but clear through the speakers. Carter solved himself. Heart attacks are convenient. The room erupted. Whispers became shouts. Cameras pressed closer. The live-stream chat exploded with reactions. But Zhao barely reacted. He'd been expecting this. "Out of context," he said calmly into his microphone, voice cutting through the chaos. "I was speaking callously about Mr. Carter's unfortunate natural death, not claiming responsibility. Poor taste? Absolutely. Criminal? Hardly." "Then explain Wang Li." Danielle's voice rose. "Another accountant who investigated you. Another convenient death. Another accident. Tragic coincidences. And the families you displaced? The illegal code violations? The bribes to city officials?" She was addressing the audience now, not Zhao. "I have documents proving systematic fraud, shell corporations designed to hide money laundering, witness testimony from dozens of victims." Zhao's lawyer, positioned stage left, stood. "These are unsubstantiated allegations. Miss Carter has no legal standing to—" "I have his partner's confession," Danielle shouted over him. "Richard Hale is testifying that Zhao Liang ordered Wang Li's murder and helped cover up my father's." That landed. The room went quiet again, everyone processing the implications. Zhao's mask finally cracked. Just for a moment, his careful control slipped, and what showed beneath was rage. Pure, cold, murderous rage. "You've built your entire case on the word of a disgraced man facing prison," he said, voice tight. "Richard Hale would say anything to reduce his sentence." "Then explain this." Marcus was suddenly beside her, tablet in hand, projecting financial documents onto the screen behind them. "Your company's complete financial history. Every transaction, every shell corporation, every illegal property acquisition. It's all here." The projection showed spreadsheets, transaction records, property transfers, the culmination of weeks of investigation laid bare for the world to see. Zhao's lawyer was frantically making calls. Security moved toward the stage, but the cameras were still rolling, the live stream still broadcasting, and the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. "You displaced over 300 families," Danielle continued, finding her rhythm now, her voice stronger. "You bribed officials, manipulated code enforcement, threatened anyone who opposed you. You built an empire on the backs of people you considered beneath you." She took a step toward him, and instinctively Zhao stepped back. "You killed my father because he was going to expose you. You killed Wang Li for the same reason, and you threatened my 15-year-old brother to make me stop." Gasps from the audience. That detail, the threat against a child, was too far, even for people accustomed to cutthroat business. "I never—" Zhao started, but his lawyer grabbed his arm, whispering frantically. "You told me I was beneath you," Danielle said, and her voice broke slightly, not with weakness, but with the weight of everything she'd carried. "In a diner in Chicago, you looked at me like I was nothing, like I didn't matter, like people like me exist only to serve people like you." She held up her phone again, showing the photo of her father, Samuel Carter, smiling, proud, alive. "This man mattered. Wang Li mattered. Every family you destroyed mattered, and you will not erase us." The room erupted in applause. Not everyone, but enough. Investors were leaving, making calls, distancing themselves in real time. Politicians who'd been photographed with Zhao were suddenly unavailable for comment. But Zhao wasn't finished. He grabbed the microphone back, his composure reassembling. "This is slander," he announced. "I will be suing Miss Carter for defamation, and I will prove in court that every allegation is false." "Then let's go to court," Danielle shot back. "Let's put everything under oath. Let's see how your empire holds up under real scrutiny. Right now, in this moment, everything Zhao built is collapsing. One woman, one truth. That's all it took. Subscribe if you believe one voice can shatter an empire, because you're watching it happen. Zhao stared at her, and in that moment, Danielle saw him truly understand. He'd underestimated her, dismissed her, and that dismissal had given her the freedom to move invisibly, to gather weapons, to become the thing he should have feared from the beginning. You want justice? Zhao's voice went quiet, dangerous. You want me to acknowledge your father? Fine. He turned to address the audience, arms spread wide. Samuel Carter was a minor accountant who stumbled onto information he didn't understand. He died of natural causes because he was weak, physically, mentally, morally weak. He couldn't handle the pressure of real business. The cruelty was breathtaking. People actually gasped. And his daughter. Zhao looked directly at Danielle. She's exactly what I said. Beneath me, beneath all of us. She's a waitress playing detective, and now she's destroyed her own credibility by making a scene at a professional event. He smiled, triumphant. I'll walk away from this unscathed. My lawyers will tear apart every piece of your evidence. And you'll be forgotten. Just another bitter person who couldn't accept that some people are simply better. The words were designed to destroy her, to reduce her back to that night in the diner, powerless and humiliated. But Danielle had changed since then. She stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and spoke directly into his microphone. You're right about one thing. Some people are better, but it's not about money or power. She looked past him to the audience, to the cameras, to the thousands watching worldwide. It's about character, courage, the willingness to fight for what's right even when it costs everything. She turned back to Zhao. My father had that. I have that. And you have nothing but money, and we're about to take that too. On cue, Marcus projected one final image. A federal warrant issued that morning for Zhao Liang's arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, money laundering, and racketeering. Federal agents are waiting outside, Marcus announced. The DA's office has been building this case for weeks. Everything we presented tonight, it's already been submitted as evidence. This wasn't a confrontation, Mr. Zhao. This was your confession, given in front of witnesses. The color drained from Zhao's face. His lawyer tried to pull him off stage, but FBI agents were already entering the auditorium, badges raised. The room descended into chaos, cameras flashing, people shouting, investors fleeing toward exits. Zhao stood frozen, watching his empire collapse in real time. The live stream had over 50,000 viewers now. Every major news outlet was picking up the story. His phone buzzed incessantly with calls he wouldn't answer. Agent Morrison, lead investigator, approached the stage with handcuffs. Zhao Liang, you're under arrest for— Wait! Zhao's voice was barely a whisper. Everyone stopped. The room fell silent again, hundreds of eyes watching. Zhao looked at Danielle, and for the first time she saw something besides arrogance in his expression. Not remorse. He wasn't capable of that. But recognition. Understanding that he'd lost. You want me to bow? He asked quietly. Danielle's breath caught. She hadn't said those words, hadn't demanded it. But he knew. Somehow he knew that's what this had always been about, forcing him to acknowledge her humanity, her power, her father's worth. The entire room held its breath. Zhao Liang, worth billions, feared across continents, untouchable for decades, slowly, with trembling hands, lowered himself to his knees. The camera flashes were blinding. The live stream chat scrolled too fast to read. History was being made, recorded, immortalized. He didn't speak, didn't apologize. But the image alone said everything. The powerful brought low, justice visible and undeniable. Agent Morrison stepped forward with the handcuffs. Mr. Zhao, stand up, please. Zhao rose, hands extended for the cuffs, but his eyes never left Danielle's face. In them she saw hatred, pure, undiluted hatred. This isn't over, he said, so quietly only she could hear. "Yes," Danielle replied just as quietly. "It is." The agents led him away, and the room erupted. Reporters swarmed. Marcus grabbed Danielle's arm, pulling her toward a side exit before they could be trampled by the media frenzy. They made it to the street where cold November air hit like a slap. Danielle's legs gave out and she collapsed against the building, adrenaline finally crashing. "We did it," Marcus said, voice shaking. We actually did it." She couldn't speak, could only nod, tears streaming down her face. Relief, grief, exhaustion, triumph all mixed together. Her phone rang. "Jamal." "Did you see?" he asked when she answered. "It's all over social media. Everyone's talking about it. You made him kneel, sis. You actually made him kneel." "I didn't make him do anything," Danielle managed. "He chose to, because he finally understood." "Understood what?" "That power isn't about money. It's about refusing to be broken." They talked for a few more minutes, Jamal's excited chatter grounding her, reminding her why all of this had mattered. When she hung up, Marcus had coffee somehow. Terrible street vendor coffee that tasted like heaven. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now? The legal system does its job. The DA prosecutes, Richard testifies, and with everything we gave them, Zhao's looking at 20 years minimum." Marcus sipped his coffee. "His empire's already collapsing. Investors are pulling out, partners are fleeing, properties are being seized. By tomorrow morning, he'll be worth nothing." "Good." They stood there in silence, watching New York move around them. Taxis honking, people rushing, the city indifferent to the revolution that had just occurred in a glass building 5 blocks away. "Your dad would be proud," Marcus said finally. Danielle closed her eyes, letting herself imagine it. Samuel Carter watching his daughter stand on that stage, watching justice finally arrive, watching the man who killed him fall. "Yeah," she whispered, "he would be." The news coverage was relentless for weeks. Every detail of Zhao's crimes emerged, each revelation worse than the last. The FBI uncovered not just fraud and money laundering, but connections to organized crime, illegal campaign contributions, even human trafficking through his construction crews. Richard Hale's testimony sealed it. He detailed Wang Li's murder, drugged and dumped in Lake Michigan. He described how they'd induced Samuel Carter's heart attack using a slow-acting poison that mimicked natural causes. He named names, provided dates, turned over documents. In exchange for his cooperation, he'd serve 15 years instead of life. It wasn't enough, not for what he'd done, but it was something. The trial became a media sensation. Danielle was called to testify, her recordings played in open court, her father's documents admitted as evidence. She sat on the witness stand and looked Zhao in the eye while describing exactly what he'd done to her family. He never looked away, never apologized, never showed remorse. The jury deliberated for 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Zhao Liang was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison, no parole eligibility for 25 years. His assets were frozen, his properties seized, his name synonymous with corruption. The displaced families received settlements, not enough to erase what they'd suffered, but enough to rebuild. Mrs. Chen got her house back. Danielle's aunt stayed in Garfield Park, and Samuel Carter's name was cleared, posthumously, recognized as a whistleblower who died trying to expose corporate crime. 6 months after the trial, Danielle stood in front of a small community center in Garfield Park, watching contractors hang a sign, the Samuel Carter Foundation for Housing Justice. The building had been donated by one of Zhao's seized properties, fitting, somehow, that his empire would fund the organization designed to prevent future versions of him. Marcus appeared at her elbow, carrying boxes of office supplies. The insurance finally came through. We're officially operational next week. What's our caseload look like? 17 families fighting eviction, 3 class action suits against predatory developers, and about 50 calls a day from people who just need someone to listen. He set down the boxes, grinning. We're going to need more staff. Danielle smiled. The foundation had started as an idea, sketched on napkins during sleepless nights. Now it was real. A legal aid organization focused specifically on protecting low-income families from the kind of abuse Zhao had perfected. They had pro bono lawyers, housing advocates, financial counselors. They had a board of directors that included Mrs. Chen, 3 formerly displaced families, and a former city inspector who'd been fired for refusing to falsify violations. They had purpose. Jamal wants to volunteer, Marcus continued. Says he wants to help people like Dad did. He's 16. He's old enough to answer phones and file paperwork. Besides, it'll look good on college applications. Danielle laughed, the first truly light laugh she'd had in months. Fine. But he's not handling the difficult cases. I don't want him exposed to the worst of it yet. Agreed. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, organizing the office, making it feel like a place where people could find help, where dignity was the default, not a privilege. Around noon, a news van pulled up. Danielle groaned. Not again. Hey, publicity helps with fundraising, Marcus pointed out. Smile and talk about the mission. 5 minutes? Tops. The reporter was young, earnest, clearly excited to interview the woman who'd become something of a folk hero. Miss Carter, thank you for your time. How does it feel to have brought down one of Chicago's most powerful developers? Danielle considered the question carefully. It doesn't feel like victory. It feels like the beginning of accountability. Zhao was one man, but the system that enabled him still exists. We're trying to change that, one family at a time. Do you have a message for other whistleblowers who might be afraid to come forward? Yes. Danielle looked directly into the camera. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. And you're not alone. Organizations like ours exist to support you, protect you, amplify you. Don't let fear silence you. The interview wrapped, the van left, and Danielle returned to the office where Marcus was setting up computers. You're getting good at this, he observed. The media thing. I hate it. But you're good at it. She couldn't argue. In the months since Zhao's arrest, Danielle had become an accidental spokesperson for housing justice. She'd given speeches, written op-eds, appeared on panels. People listened when she talked, not because she was eloquent or polished, but because she'd lived the struggle she was describing. She was authentic, relatable. She thought about injustice happening and doing nothing. Danielle refused to be one of them. The foundation wasn't just about housing, it was about refusing to let the powerful silence the powerless. 3 weeks later, the foundation officially opened. The community turned out. Mrs. Chen brought homemade dumplings. Danielle's aunt organized a neighborhood potluck. Former clients shared their stories. Jamal worked the registration table, signing people up for legal consultations, his smile identical to their father's. Danielle stood at the front of the small crowd, notes trembling in her hands. A year ago, she began, I was a waitress in a diner, invisible to the people who held power over my community. A man looked at me and said I was beneath him, and in that moment I believed it. The crowd was silent, attentive. But my father taught me something. He taught me that truth doesn't care about power. Numbers don't lie. Justice doesn't require permission. Her voice strengthened. Samuel Carter died trying to expose corruption. Wang Li died for the same reason. They were killed because powerful people thought they could bury truth along with the bodies. She looked around the room, seeing faces of every age, race, background, people united by struggle and survival. But truth doesn't stay buried. It finds its way out through people who refuse to be silent, through communities that protect each other, through organizations like this one built on the belief that everyone deserves a safe home and a fair chance. Mrs. Chen wiped her eyes. Others nodded, murmuring agreement. This foundation exists because my father believed in justice. Because Marcus, she gestured to him, believed in me. Because every person in this room believes that we deserve better than what powerful people are willing to give us. She held up a photo. Samuel Carter at his desk, papers spread around him, focused and determined. Dad, this is for you, and for everyone who fights even when fighting seems impossible. We see you, we hear you, and we won't let you be erased. The applause was thunderous. Not polite clapping, but real, emotional, cathartic cheering. People hugged, cried, celebrated. Danielle stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded. A mother thanking her for saving their home. A teenager saying she inspired him to study law. An elderly man who'd known her father offering stories about Samuel's kindness. It was overwhelming, beautiful, exhausting. Around sunset, when the crowd had thinned and volunteers were cleaning up, Danielle slipped outside. She needed air, space, a moment alone with her thoughts. Marcus found her anyway. He always did. "You okay?" "Yeah, just processing." She looked at the foundation's sign, lit now against the darkening sky. "A year ago I thought my life was over. Now I'm running a non-profit, giving speeches, changing lives. It doesn't feel real. It's real. You made it real." "We made it real," she corrected. "I couldn't have done this alone." "True. But you were the one brave enough to start." Marcus leaned against the railing beside her. "You could have stayed silent after that night at the diner, accepted the humiliation, moved on. Most people would have. Most people don't have their father murdered. Most people who do don't fight back against billionaires." Danielle smiled slightly. "Guess I'm not most people." "No, you're definitely not." They stood together, watching the neighborhood come alive with evening activity. Kids playing basketball in the park across the street, neighbors chatting on stoops, life continuing in all its messy, beautiful complexity. "What's next?" Marcus asked. "For you, personally?" Danielle considered. "Finish my degree, communications, maybe public policy. I want to understand systems better so I can help more people navigate them." "And after that?" "I don't know. Politics, maybe? Advocacy work? Whatever lets me keep fighting." Marcus grinned. "Congressman Carter has a nice ring to it." Let's not get ahead of ourselves. But the seed was planted. Danielle could see it now, a path forward that didn't end with Zhao's conviction, but continued, expanded, touched more lives. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. "Come back inside. Mrs. Chen is teaching me to make dumplings and I'm terrible at it. Need supervision." She laughed, pocketing her phone. Duty calls. As they headed back inside, Danielle paused at the door, looking back at the street. Somewhere in a federal prison, Zhao Liang was adjusting to life without power, without money, without the ability to make people disappear. And here, in the neighborhood he'd tried to destroy, life flourished. That was justice. Not perfect, not complete, but real. "You coming?" Marcus called. "Yeah," Danielle said, turning away from the past and toward the future. "I'm coming." Danielle's story started with humiliation and ended with triumph. But stories like hers don't go viral by accident. They need people like you to share them. Subscribe and be part of the movement that refuses to let the powerful silence the powerless. Don't just watch change. Be the reason it spreads.